As we kind of think about, as we kind of get to the sort of end of today's episode, like what does your sort of ideal draft for the Bears look like? What does maybe the offensive line kind of look like? Sort of the shape that you're hoping for that it'll be taking.
To me, ideally, I mean, so you go get a guard and a center in free agency, um, whoever those might be, and then you have one guard spot kind of open. I hope you get a guy who is at least depth, potentially a starter in free agency still for the other guard spot, so you can go into the draft saying we don't have any dire needs here. Like we can start this offensive line.
The interior gets stronger and more Pro Bowly. We like those things. A week that was highlighted by the signing of two folks responsible for shoring up our own line makes us feel much safer in a world where 68 sacks are aimed right at your dome. Hold on. This just in. Breaking effing news. In a classic Bears in the neighborhood move, we just got our center and a new defensive end and defensive tackle, and Justin Fields just got paid by the Jets. Looks like the defense is possibly getting stronger with a few questions and a little more Pro Bowly as well. So, what did we learn about the Bears this week?
Think we learned that Q might work for the Bears, just
Yeah.
based on his prognostication from last week about him saying that they should go after a center, a guard, and then get another guard who could be a backup, but could start if we needed to, giving us flexibility in the draft. And that's exactly what their first three moves were, right?
Yeah.
They got Joe Tooney, who's a proven guard, instant pencil him in, going to be a very quality starter, great value, leader in the locker room guy at one guard spot. Then you traded for another guard, Jonah Jackson, who didn't play great last year in the Rams, but had a good year under Ben Johnson. So there's some familiarity there, and you could pencil him into the other guard spot. He's taken snaps at center before. He's kind of a depth guy. Maybe he's your upgraded version of Ryan Bates. And then you signed your center, right? The top center that was available in free agency, Drew Dahlman. And so, yeah, you really just shored up that interior of the offensive line. And they showed me that, last year there was felt like there was a lot of building outside in. This year feels a lot of building inside out, because they addressed that O line, which is great. And they took some swings at the defensive line too, with Grady Jarrett and Dio Odeyingbo. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but so they took a couple swings, and I think that it really gives them some flexibility going into the draft. Um, One of the needs that they were looking at that number 10 spot was either an edge rusher, though it seemed like a reach for anybody at that spot. You saw James Pierce from Tennessee. They talked about him. Otherwise, a defensive tackle. Really, you're looking at Mason Graham at that spot. If he falls there, I think they would still take him regardless of these moves if he fell there. Or obviously, offensive line is like the big one. One of the three offensive linemen that we talked about last week with Q. But now this gives you flex. You don't have to take any one of those guys because the players that you've signed in the last week or traded for are all starters in the league. Some high end starters, some are kind of guys, but still, you made improvements along the line. And so, yeah, I think they've given themselves a lot of flexibility. I don't think they're done yet. I think the big kind of splash stuff is over, but they'll probably add some more depth pieces as we move into the draft. But so far, yeah, pretty solid free agency day for the Bears.
Yeah, it's really, having kind of jumped into this at the beginning of last season and hearing about the Bears not making any moves and making like bad decisions and all this stuff and like, there really seemed like very definitive, this is a guy, this is who we want, this is who we should want, and then this is who we got. And like, yeah, it's cool to see. I mean, I learned a little bit about Joe Tooney, the shout out to Lone Star Daddy for letting me know that he got the like Chiefs player MVP vote, which is crazy. Like that we got him. I guess that, they had to cut him for money moves or whatever, but like that dude knows how to win Super Bowls and on a team with Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Swift's boy. Like this dude was the vote. They voted him to be the MVP. That's like a pretty fucking good.
You know why?
Do I know why?
Mhm.
No, I do not know why.
So his original position is guard, right? That's
Mm,
what we traded him for. But last year they actually had him move to left tackle, which is like, you know, different position. And normally when players get older, you might move them inside or something like that. Left tackle's the premier spot on the offensive line. And he took one for the team and he moved to left tackle and he played the season at left tackle, protecting Mahomes' blind side. Now he had a rough Super Bowl, but the entire offensive line kind of had a rough Super Bowl. But he was like team player, didn't like played really well at left tackle, and he's a really good guard. And so just shows you kind of his versatility and like it's so great that they were able to get him. And the fact that they got him for a 2026 fourth round pick is even better. He's not a young guy by any means, but he still has what 2 or 3 serviceable years left, I would say, at least 3. And he's that proven leader in the offensive line room. I don't think they've had that since like Cody Whitehair, Roberto Garza. Like they just haven't had a guy that like, okay, this is our anchor and this is our offensive line guy who's going to get everybody else in line.
yeah.
So I thought that was a great get
Yeah.
for Bulls. It like really solidified, brings everybody. He's going to make everybody better.
Yeah. I think we were talking about it last week. Like if you can get two guards, you can make up for like maybe sort of a center or like, like
Mm-hmm.
amplify their effect. And so now we got a dude who's like a good center. So it's very, I mean, I don't, as I was kind of all these group chats I'm in, like talking about all these people, it's like, man, like, we get Ben Johnson, like, all right, this seems like a project. Still, like, they're building a new offense. And then you add all these people and you're like, well, shit, like, what is actually our ceiling? It seems like it's just getting higher and higher.
And you know what? They're not just adding players to add players. It seems like they have a plan, right? Like Ben Johnson wants to run the ball. And so Drew Dahlman is a great run blocking center, and that's like the guy they targeted and the guy they wanted. And, same thing with Jackson and Tooney. They're going to really help run the football. And like, that's what he wants to do. So, um, it's a kind of exciting to see, like, this whole offseason has the coach's fingerprints kind of all over it. Even look at a guy like Dio Odiangbo, the Colts defensive end. Everybody's like, who's that? And, you know, he, this has Dennis Allen kind of written all over it because Dennis Allen likes bigger edge defenders that are like long arms and power, and that's like kind of his game. And that's I think part of the reason why DeMarcus Walker was let go. He doesn't fit that mold,
Mm.
and so they brought in this guy who we'll see. He's young. He's only 25. He didn't have great numbers last year. Actually, DeMarcus Walker's numbers were slightly better. But he's younger, I guess. I mean, he costs more, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll have to kind of put trust in the Dennis Allen on that one.
Yeah.
And then Grady Jarrett, great, good 3 technique. He has played edge in a 4-3 before, so he's a little versatile. He's 31 though, so how much does he have left in the tank? The Falcons, who didn't have a lot of pass rush help, let him go. So, I mean, I know they're up against the cap, but still, I mean, teams typically don't let good players go, right?
Yeah.
Especially in an area of weakness.
Yeah.
So, what's going on with there, but he did have a high snap count in Atlanta. I think out of all the defensive tackles, only Jalen Carter played more snaps at defensive tackle than Grady Jarrett. And so that won't be the case in Chicago. He's going to be rotating in with Billings and Dexter. And if Zach Pickens can ever figure it out, him as well. So he'll be fresher. And that's obviously going to be a good thing for him. So yeah, we'll see. I like that, man, they just signed trenches. I remember last year that Poles' first big move was DeAndre Swift, the running back, like right out the gate. And fans were like, oh man, I really thought we'd get Saquon. And then you're like, all right, well, I guess we'll get Swift. And then from there on, it was just like, all right, well, okay, let's see what else we can do. This was just like, no skill players, just on the line. And so I think that's a great philosophy. And I hope they don't stop there. I hope they draft linemen as well, both on both sides of the ball, because they really need to stock up that position
So
with young talent too.
we've been talking about it a little bit, but I've been reading, the sort of Ashton Ashton Jeanty, I don't know how to say his name.
Ashton Jainty? Yeah.
Jainty. And so it seems like, kind of from what I'm reading, the dude's good and people should want him. I guess as we're signing all these people and kind of taking up space that maybe we could have drafted now that we signed people. I mean, does it, and dudes who are like built for the run, and this guy who runs well, I've been told. I
Yeah.
guess, does it change, like if they were to draft him versus maybe an old lineman, how would you feel?
I feel fine, honestly. Because the old lineman class is kind of deep in terms of guard. I mean, maybe you can get, so they have that 39th pick, which is huge, right? So maybe you can get, maybe Zabel from North Dakota State falls to 39, right? Maybe you can get a player of his caliber. There's also, I think, Donovan Jackson from Ohio State is a guard that you can get down there. Tyler Booker might fall to 39, like we talked about with Q. So I think there's some players there. Um, there's a kid out of West Virginia too, who I think can slide in at guard. So there's some players that you can get at 39, maybe, where I wouldn't have a problem with them taking JT at 10, because they've got a starting offensive line now.
Yeah.
Obviously they need to get more depth, but they have a starting unit at this point, which they didn't have last week.
Yeah, they didn't have last week. That's crazy, dude. Is there like a wrong pick that they could do? Maybe not a person, but a position. Like, is there something that you think that there's like whispers of that
Hmm.
they might do that you would feel bad about? Or is it kind of, because I mean, it seems like we're in this position where it's like you will really have, I mean, you said it, like group chats have been, probably everybody's group chat is saying like this really opens up the where,
It does.
the flexibility angle.
It does. I mean, that's a good question, and I don't know. I mean, aside from quarterback, I don't think there's that position, right? Because like if you look at, they drafted a quarterback and wide receiver last year, so obviously quarterback's out. Wide receiver, I mean, if they took this guy T Mac out of Arizona, he's like clear cut number one wide receiver. I question like why did you do that? But at the same time, this guy's supposed to be like very very good, like a literal like a game changer, and you're like, oh dang, now we got now even if we wanted to trade DJ, you have two rookie wide receivers, like, or two wide receivers on like rookie contracts at the same time. Um, cornerback, maybe they don't need to draft one, but Will Johnson is supposed to be very good coming out of Michigan. He might not make it to 10. If he falls to 10, is that great value? I don't know. Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. It's do you really need to draft a tight end at number 10? But look at Brock Bowers. He like shattered every tight end record there was um, last year with the Raiders. So that'd be a fun 1-2 punch with him and Kmet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It's an interesting question, and I don't know if there is a totally, I guess, wrong answer for that. Uh, yeah, aside from like quarterback, there are some good prospects at 10, and I think I forgot who I was telling this to, but it feels like this draft for the first round is really only like 10 or 12 players deep. And then after that, like player 11 or 12 could be equivalent to player like 70 or something.
Mm.
That's things that I'm reading. That like there's like, you know, players 1 to 12 or something are blue chippers, and everybody else after that has some like question marks or depends on scheme, things like that. And so, but then after 100, I think it drops off again. So the fact that the Bears have 4 picks in the top 100 is good. Um, and I think, you know what? And they might even trade back too. Like, because since they have all those holes plugged, let's say they really want a Genti and he doesn't get drafted. He's not at number 10. They could trade back and get some additional picks and, you know, try to get into that second tier group of guys too.
Yeah, that flexibility and that options is really like a nice position to be in.
Hmm.
It's a lot of move. That's kind of on a so this podcast, we're obviously doing the Bears podcast, but I've been doing like Mr. Rutter's neighborhood for many, many, many years. Like that's how we kind of started this, was doing a long interview. And on a
Hmm.
early episode, one of my friends, we were talking about parents and what parents want for children, and he said all your parents want is for their children to have options. Like if you have a
Hmm.
choice, that means you've reached a position that's like very good. And we had seemed
Yeah.
to be in a position as a Bears team organization in this moment where it's like they have a lot of options. It isn't like you have to do one specific thing. There's maybe the optimal choice, get the best. We're still working on building the O line, but there's like lots of options, and all those options have like pretty great benefit.
Yeah. But you just can't make the wrong choice. And that's what they've kind of done a lot of.
Yeah.
So, if you like if you like an edge rusher, great. Just don't draft the wrong one, you know. Um,
There's still some responsibility in those options. Just because you
yes,
have the options, you still have to make the
still
right
got to
decision.
execute, man. There's so many offensive linemen. Like, let's say let's say somehow Will Campbell and that Armand Membo guy, they're both available at 10. Who are you gonna pick? Like it's great you have a choice. Make sure you don't take the wrong one though, right? Like for what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have offensive head coach just makes me feel so much better about those decisions. I can't even imagine what Matt Eberflus is probably like when he's like Will Campbell and Armin. I don't know. What's
He's
their
he's listening to our podcast to get a sense of like who
Yeah?
who those
What are their
guys.
thoughts on the hits principle? I don't know.
It's kind of like this feels like a different team because the decisions that are being made right now, obviously we drafted Caleb Williams and that's great, but there's just like some of these make sure the lines are solid because that's
Yeah,
kind of where the game happens and then the rest can, open up or implode. And like, I mean, did Ryan Poles not know this last year? I mean, it
I don't
seems like
know. It's weird. Yeah, I don't understand. Like he was still doing. That's why I think the coaches have a big say in this class because the approach has been totally different
yeah.
than last year. But maybe last year they felt, for whatever reason, very comfortable with their offensive and defensive lines, which didn't really work out so well. I mean, once Billings got hurt, that defensive line really went
Yeah.
downhill. But you can't be overly reliant on one guy. Maybe that's why Grady Jarrett's there. I still think that they'll probably use their first, say, 4 picks in the top 100. I think three of them. I think at least two will be on in the line somewhere,
Yeah.
whether it's offensive or defensive. Probably three. If a safety or something falls, Starks from Georgia, for example, if he falls to a spot that they like, he could be an outside player. But I feel like it's going to be, let's say, three linemen and a running back. That's my.
Yeah. That's new show on CBS, I think, coming
Oh
out
yeah.
next fall. Cool. Well, today's been a very exciting day as we sort of close out today's episode. I mean, the vibes seem very positive as we continue to trend in a good direction and add
We
sort of
are three-time offseason champs.
it's,
The
start there.
first one we won the trade, trading out of the number one spot, getting the haul. Second off-season champs, we got the number one and number nine pick. And now the third year, we got the coach, we got the hot coach. So let's see, we did draft, we did quarterback, we did coach, back the three-time off-season champ. So
Yeah, I think the next thing is just
let's
Super
see if we
Bowl.
can translate to wins on the field.
Yeah, he went on the field.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Any final thoughts? Any things to kind of look? Are there people sort of floating out there that are still free agents that you think you'd like the Bears to kind of consider? Are there anything you're hearing out in the world?
No, not really. I was thinking they would go for Josh Sweat over Dio, which is strange because Sweat only signed for 3 million more a year than Dio did, and I think Sweat is a better player, but maybe he just didn't fit the scheme. So I don't know. I don't think there's any other big splash moves left. I thought maybe Jonathan Allen or Chase Young to add to the line, but I don't see either of those moves happening now that they've signed Jarrett and Odiungbo. So I don't know. Maybe a safety if they like one, just because Jaquan's health and Byard's a little older. Something to look out for, but I don't think there's any big moves here coming. Just maybe more depth pieces.
Yeah, yeah, exciting. I mean, you get the main stuff, and then you can just like add and strengthen, sort of like yeah, little pieces here or there.
Yeah. Maybe be on the lookout for a veteran quarterback once the dust settles.
Yeah,
We
sure.
talked
That's
about that with trading of Tyson. I was wrong on one of the podcasts. If you're an undrafted free agent, your contract's only 3 years, not 5 years. So he doesn't have years left on his deal. This is Tyson Patient's basically an expiring contract this year. So you probably won't get much for him in way of a trade, but he's still a player that he can ball when given the opportunity, we've seen.
yeah, that actually does seem like maybe the kind of sort of last remaining big signing then, I guess. Big, sort of
Mhm.
lowercase B-I-G, I guess.
Mhm.
Big signing that's still floating around there. So I mean, I don't know. They seem to be rolling, so probably by the time we finish recording, they will have. Slash
That's what we
quarterback.
do. Let me just do a real quick. Let me do a real quick scan, see if we
Yeah.
can react to something.
Oh, in real time.
Let's see. No, I don't see any news, but I'm sure as soon as we hang up, somebody's gonna be like, "Oh God, they didn't even talk about this that happened." But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what comes up in the next couple days. But I think they're pretty well done for today anyway.
Hell yeah. Well, for Samir Patel, I'm Chirag Rathod. We're the Bears in the neighborhood. Happy birthday, Cole Kmet, who's Monday, March 10th. Shout out Cole
Friend of the
Kmet.
show.
Friend of
Happy
the
birthday,
show.
Cole Kmet. Happy birthday, Cole Kmet. I'm
Uh,
assuming he's a friend of the show. He's not a friend.
yeah, he's definitely not an enemy of the show.
Exactly, yeah. So,
Thank you for listening, and we will catch you all next week.
bye-bye, Saskatchewan.